So thank all of you for coming here today for this evening's program. I will be speaking on emotion, commotion and devotion. Emotion, commotion and devotion. Emotions are a defining feature of life. In the Ramayana, when Lord Ram is exiled, at that time Lord Ram very obediently accepts the sentence of banishment. But Lakshmana opposes. He says, why should you accept passively delayed injustice? But when Ram says, no, I am going to obey my father and go, he goes. Then Lakshmana also goes. And then when they see that when they are sitting in Chitrakoot, Chitrakuta, Dreniketan, Rama, so he makes the word Chitrakoot, at that time they see a commotion. And Rama asks Lakshmana to climb on a tree. And then Lakshmana sees from there, he says that the whole Ayodhya army is coming. He says, Bharat is there. So he says, Bharat, he must be in cahoots with Kaikeyi, and now he has come to attack and kill us. Now he will not escape the wrath of my arrows today. I will kill him. And then Ram very gently but strongly rebukes him. He says, no, I do not consider Bharat's love for me, any less than your love for me. I am sure Bharat must have come out of benevolent intention. Has he offended you in any way that you are so angry with him? Okay. Is it better now behind?
Yes.
Or is it that, you have become already fed up with life in the forest and you are venting out your wrath on Bharat? If that is the case, then if I ask, Bharat will stay and you can go back and rule the kingdom. Lakshmana gets completely deflated by that. And then when he sees Bharat, how sweet, how gentle. It's one of the most moving incidents in the Ramayana, when Bharat and Ram have their loving tussle. Bharat is saying, come back to the kingdom. Ram says, no, I cannot come back. And finally, Bharat says that, I cannot go back without you. If you do not come back to the kingdom, if you do not accept the kingdom that is yours, then I will sit here and I will fast. And he sits down for fasting over there. So at that time, Ram says that, Bharat, your love has won. So actually this is said to be a confrontation between love and duty. Ram's duty to his father and Bharat's love for his brother. So Ram says that your love has won. I cannot refuse your request. You have come to give me this kingdom, I accept it. Now Bharat's face just blossoms in joy. And then now Ram is also very expert. He says, at the same time, I feel I cannot disobey my father. Therefore, after accepting the kingdom which you have given me, I entrust it to you for 14 years. So on my behalf, you take care of this kingdom. And let me honor the word which I gave to my father. So at that time, Bharat realizes, now I cannot speak any further. And he says, and the whole world should know that you are the king, that I am not the king. Please give me some token. And then Ram uses padukas. If today there are two sons and they had, or two children, they had succession battle. If one son gave his paduka, the other person probably hit him on the head. So finally Lakshmana takes the paduka on his head and goes. So at that time, after that Lakshmana and Ram have a fraternal relationship, but sometimes Ram takes a paternal role, like a father. He's after all the elder brother. So then Lakshmana becomes very apologetic, when he sees how much devotion Bharat had. So he says that, I don't understand why I become so angry sometimes. So at that time Ram says, like elder brother, he pats his chest and he says, तुम बहुत भावुक हो. You know, you are very sentimental. So then Lakshmana asks, are sentiments bad? Is it undesirable to be sentimental? So that Lord Ram replies, no, sentiments are very good. Says, emotions are the ornaments of life. But we should choose those emotions that lift us up. So emotions are the ornaments of life. And certainly emotions should be cherished. But Lord Rama adds that we should choose those emotions which take us towards dharma, not those emotions which take us away from dharma. We should choose those emotions which lift us up, not those emotions which drag us down. So, this is a very important devotional principle. Not just a devotional principle, actually it is a principle even for human life in general. We are emotional creatures. And it's not wrong. But we also have intelligence by which we can choose which emotions to cultivate and which emotions to eliminate or to at least regulate. And for that, we need an intelligence which is directed by something higher than our emotions. Our intelligence can work either to direct our emotions or our intelligence can be directed by our emotions. So what Lord Ram is telling over here telling to Lakshman is that let your emotions be directed by your intelligence knowledge of dharma. So when you know what is dharma, then accordingly you decide how you act, which emotions to cultivate, which emotions to regulate or eliminate. So another example from the Ramayana to illustrate this. This happened before when Bharat comes back and he sees Ayodhya is devastated by the double disaster. First the exile of Ram, who is the beloved prince of the whole kingdom, and then the demise of Dashrath. And when he hears that Kaikeyi is responsible for all this, he is furious. And he comes to know that it is Manthara who instigated Kaikeyi for all this. And then Dashrath's body has been kept in an oil vat because the final rites have to be done by a son, and no son was there at that time. So then they do the final rites, both Bharat and Shatrugna are there, and they come back. So when they are coming back from to the palace, at that time, Bharat is caught by some, is not caught, is approached, and some courtiers start talking with him. So Shatrugna moves onwards. And then just outside Kaikeyi's palace, Shatrugna sees Manthara. And he's furious with her. Just runs to her and grabs her. Manthara screams and runs away. And she runs straight into the palace of Kaikeyi to seek refuge. But the whole of Ayodhya is angry with her. So as she tries to run inside to get shelter, the guard over there catches her. And guard catches her and drags her back. And brings her. She is the cause of the ocean of agony that is now drowning Ayodhya. Punish her as you see fit. So then, Shatrugna, he just catches Manthara and starts shaking her in great fury. And all that anger and agony at the death of their father and the great injustice to their brother, it's all pent up and starts coming out. At that time, Manthara realizes nobody can see. So then she looks at him and she starts screaming for Kaikeyi. And then Kaikeyi comes rushing out of the palace to see what has happened to her maid. And as Kaikeyi comes over there, Bharat also comes behind to see what is this commotion. And then Kaikeyi says, Shatrugna, stop. But Shatrugna pays no attention to her. And now Shatrugna is not her son, he is a stepson. So she is her own son, Bharat behind. He says, Bharat, tell Shatrugna to stop. So Bharat is still furious with his mother. And he looks at her with eyes of cold fury and he says, what Shatrugna is doing to Manthara, I feel like doing to you. She's furious, she's shocked. But then he says, stop. Shatrugna, stop. Shatrugna is still very angry and he's also not ready to stop. So, okay, Shatrugna, think. Now, if whatever you want, what you're trying to do to mantra, I have contemplated doing this 100 times. The one reason that has checked me from doing this is the knowledge that if we hurt either mantra or Kaikai, Ram will never forgive us. Ram will not want them to be hurt. And if we at all are to have any hope of being able to call Ram back, get him to come back and accept the kingdom, that hope will be lost if you hurt him, let him go. When Shatrugna hears this, he immediately lets go of mantra. So the point is twofold over here. Now there may be righteous causes for certain emotions. Now the emotion of anger that was there in Bharat and Shatrugna, it was completely righteous. Now, what Kaikai had done was very grievous. And that she had done all this saying that I was doing this for the sake of Bharat. It was very difficult for Bharat to tolerate it all at that time. And his anger was in all sense warranted. We could say that. But it is Kshatriya code, not just a Kshatriya code, it's a normal human code that one does not raise one's hand against a woman. Or to speak of one's own mother or any elderly woman, or what to speak of any woman for that matter. So although at that point the emotion of anger was justified, what gave Bharat the capacity to control that emotion was his devotion to Ram, his desire to please Ram, or at least his desire that Ram should not be displeased with him. So what this means is, from this particular story, what I would like to make out the point is, all of us have within us some emotions which will drag us down, which will make us want to indulge in things which will be harmful for us. And all of us have some upward connections, some emotions which inspire us to do the right things. And which emotions will win out in our life will depend on which association we value the most. We will have, in our society, we'll have, say, friends who may be very materialistic. And they may make obscene jokes and they may do all sorts of materialistic things. And if we value their friendship, if we consider their opinion of us very important, then we will do whatever it takes to please them. And by that association, or not just by that association, by our attachment to that association, because we are attached to that association, we want to be thought good in that association, then our lower side will come out. So our emotion, if they are not checked, they will bring about commotion. And because they will drag us down, they will create chaos in our life. And if we don't want our emotions to drag us down, then they have to be connected upwards to devotion. So now a very good example of how a good person can be emotionally manipulated is Karna. Now Karna was by nature a virtuous person, but he got attached to Duryodhana. I gave an elaborate class a few days ago on the whole life of Karna. I won't go into all of it. But Duryodhana knew exactly what buttons to press to make Karna do nothing. So he swung Karna over, and then because of his desire, because of Karna's desire to please Duryodhana, Karna did things which he himself bitterly regretted afterwards. In the gambling match, and in that assembly, when Draupadi was dragged into the assembly with her, and she was wearing only a single cloth. Her period was just ending at that time. That's why she was dressed in that apparel. So at that time, it was a scandalous thing, outrageous thing to do. And how did Karna justify it? Karna called Draupadi a prostitute over there. And he said she's already got 5 husbands. She's a prostitute. Now whether she comes with one cloth or no cloth, there's no difference for such a woman. So just take off her clothes. Oh, Karna himself says later to Krishna as well as to Bhishma, I bitterly regretted what I spoke at that time. But I spoke because I wanted to please Duryodhana. So, what happens is our emotions can cause us to be dragged down if they are manipulated by others, especially those whose morals, whose standards are not very high. They will drag us down. Now, starting with this, framing from the 2 epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, I would like to talk a little bit about contemporary society. So I'll start from a historical perspective, and then I will come to our current situation. If we look at the advertisements, say 100 years ago, most advertisements at that time, most advertisements would tell how good a product is. Suppose somebody wanted to sell a vehicle. They would tell, oh, this vehicle has this much mileage, this vehicle has this advantage. And that's why you should take this vehicle. So, all advertisements were based on how good a vehicle is. The father of modern psychology is a Sigmund Freud. And he is called the father of psychology. Now, he was in some ways brilliant. He was a very eloquent speaker, very penetrating intellectual. But he was also perverted in many ways. So, one of the theories or one of his observations or theories, whatever you want to say, he said that the human mind is like a turbulent ocean. And on that human mind filled with turbulent ocean, what are the waves in that ocean? That is our emotions. And he said, on top of that, our reason in his language is our intelligence. He said, our reason is like a tiny canoe, tiny boat. And we want to act reasonably, we expect others to act reasonably, but at any time from that ocean, turbulent waves may come and completely overthrow the person's reason and make that person act irrationally. And that was how he explained. Now, he lived at a time when the First World War just took place. That was the time he was at his popularity was up, and then afterwards it came down. So he said the cause of the First World War, and then subsequently his followers said the cause of the Second World War also. How could one country consider, say Germany started considering that Jews are the cause of our own problems, and they ended up killing 5 million Jews. Total 10 million people. He said, how did this happen? He said, because Hitler emotionally manipulated people. The whole German nation, they believed his propaganda that all our problems are caused by Jews. And if we just eliminate Jews, our problems will be solved. So these sort of events on the world screen also seem to confirm his theory. That if people's emotions are activated, then their reason will be sabotaged, the reason will be destroyed. Now this insight, I'll talk about how it correlates with the Gita's wisdom a little later, but let me take the historical perspective forward. This insight was captured by the advertising industry. And whereas prior to Freud's theories, all advertisements focused on how good a product is. Now all the advertisers are focusing on how good a product will make you feel. Not how good the product is, how good you will feel after getting this product. So the focus became triggering the emotions of people and manipulating them based on their emotions. So once I was at the airport going to Calcutta to go to Mayapur, so I saw overhead on the screen there was an advertisement. So it was of a Bollywood star. It was a young man and he was just walking along, and this Bollywood star comes And then as soon as he comes, there's a bevy of young girls. They see him and they start squealing and they start cheering him. They run to him and hug him and kiss him. And this young man is looking, so low, poor low. Nobody notices me. Nobody cares for me. And then this Bollywood star comes in and I'll tell you what is my secret. My secret is, a shampoo, fair and handsome. I says, and now, then after the next screen shows that, now his hair is, they don't even show it, I think, as far as I remember, applying the shampoo. Now he's walking along, they applied the shampoo and he comes and then all those girls, they all start coming to him, squealing and hugging and kissing him. When I watched this, I said, this is an advertisement that is an insult to both male and female intelligence. That a woman will fall for a man just because he has applied a shampoo. This is an insult to female intelligence. And that men will believe such fairy tales. That is an insult to male intelligence. But I've seen this advertisement afterwards so many times. It seems to be a popular advertisement. And people buy into it. Why? Because it makes them feel good. So what I'm talking about is not just in the advertising industry. Now it has actually pervaded the whole media. That it's all about exploiting your feelings. How we can exploit people's feelings to make them do what we want them to do. The whole advertising industry is based on that. There's a book written about these fast foods that are sold. So Michael Morse is a Pulitzer Award-winning journalist, and he wrote a book on sugar, salt, and fat. How the food giants hooked us. How the food giants with McDonald's and all these big multinational corporations. So how they hooked us. So what he wrote in that is very, very amazing research. So they researched and found that when we eat some food tastes as delicious, some food tastes as ordinary. Some food tastes not just delicious but as irresistible. So what they did, there is research, when people are eating food, when some food tastes as irresistible, find out what are the areas of the brain that are activated. So that is what is called the gustatory cortex in the brain, which is activated when we eat food. And depending on the taste of the food, the more the food seems tasty, then the more that area gets activated in the brain. So what these what these food giants like McDonald's and others did is, they found that the more salt, the more sugar, the more fat you put in food, the more the gustatory cortex of the brain gets activated. And by that, people find that once they get a taste for eating food cooked outside the house, because it is filled with oil, sugar and fat, it is not at all nutritious. It is in fact hazardous for health, because that level of sugar, salt and fat is definitely not good. But people get hooked to it. So what is happening here is, when a mother prepares a food for a child, when our family members prepare a food for us, there is love, there is concern, there is caring over there. But here, there is not just exploitation, but systematically, scientifically planned exploitation. And the result of this is that when people eat this commercial food, this sort of food prepared by the food giant, it gives a momentary zing. Yes, the brain gets activated, it's a peak impulse that comes, and people feel so captivated by that food that they feel, I just have to eat more and more and more. And then, after that zing goes down, because what happens, all material stimuli, they may give some pleasure, but in that pleasure there is the law of diminishing returns. So, if we eat something first time, it's great. Second time, it's great. Third time, well, good. Fourth time, okay. Fifth time, maybe next time. I don't know anything about it. So, if something is told, first time it is irresistible. If your stomach is full, 10 times somebody says eat it. No, I can't eat it now. If you are forced to eat, you may vomit it also. So the point is that there is a law of diminishing returns. So what they did is, slowly they start hiking up these levels. So whenever they find that the sales of their products are going down, just increase the fat a little bit, increase the salt a little bit, increase the sugar a little bit. In fact, so according to this author, now a situation has come, because of these foods, now there are many problems that come up, but one of the biggest problems is obesity. So now the problem with obesity in America, at least for some years, it has become so great that there were not enough young men in America, young men or even young women, who could join the American army because no one was fit enough. Everybody was too obese. So that was because initially the American government didn't want to have immigrants join their army. Because how much their national interest will get compromised, they don't know. But they had a crisis because all the American children, they were so obese that they were just not fit enough to join the army. They had to open it to the immigrants. More and more. Okay, the point which I am making is that throughout in the modern culture, there is very systematic plan to exploit us by our emotions. Exploit us by our emotions. And this, the result of this often is that people just get so hooked to certain things that it's almost impossible to give it up. Although initially there is pleasure, but afterwards it becomes an addiction. And later on we do that activity not because it gives us pleasure, but because not doing it causes pain. So initially a person may smoke or drink because it feels so good. But once a person gets habituated, addicted to that, then it's not that by smoking or drinking one gets pleasure. It's not doing this causes so much agitation. So then at that time, the indulgence is not so much a pleasure as a relief from a self-inflicted misery. The indulgence is not a pleasure, it's a relief from a self-inflicted misery. Why is it self-inflicted? Because we ourselves got attached, we ourselves got addicted, and then I can't live without it. I have to eat this, I have to do that, I have to smoke, I have to drink. And then a person, then even if one does that activity, there is not much pleasure, there may be just a little relief, and then after that relief goes away, and again one feels like I have to do this again, I have to do this again, I have to do this again. And perhaps the one of the most detrimental ways in which this emotional manipulation happens in today's times is through pornography. In pornography, essentially the person is objectified to a shape. The person is just reduced to a shape, and that shape is just for my pleasure. And in the Vedic way of looking at things, there are different levels of consciousness. So there is the lowest level of consciousness, Annamaya. Annamaya means what? Everything is food. So like a small child, when it is born, or an infant when it is born, actually it feels the world by its mouth. The first sensation it gets is the mother's breast from which it gets milk. So because that gives nourishment, then it starts putting everything. It puts finger in the mouth, maybe legs fingers in the mouth also. It takes a pillow and puts it in the mouth. But gradually, so the idea is the whole world is potential food. The whole world is potential food. So now from there, one is to grow upwards, and then one comes to pranamaya. Pranamaya means one starts discerning. Okay, this I should not eat. Because the primary consideration is not food, primary consideration is survival. So a small child may take a knife and put it in the mouth also. Small infant. But then when his mouth starts bleeding, this causes pain. So when it comes to a pranamaya level of consciousness, where one starts seeing, this is not favorable for my survival, so I will not do it. Then after that pranamaya, there is manomaya. Manomaya is where one is at the level of emotions. Mind is the location for emotions. So at the manomaya level, we are driven primarily by our emotions. So food and survival are also considerations. But we do many activities which are not necessarily directly connected with food or survival. People go and see some natural scenery. People go and watch movies. So many things they do, which is just they're driven by, I feel like doing it. So at the manomaya level, it's feeling driven primarily. Then subsequently the names, the nomenclature sometimes varies. Sometimes called Jnanamay, Vijnanamay, where one is at the level of the intelligence. One starts thinking about ultimate purpose. And the highest level is Anandamay. Anandamay is where we realize our spiritual identity and we experience spiritual happiness. We experience the development of spiritual emotions, and therein there is real happiness, there is lasting happiness. So Annamay, Pranamay, Manomay, Jnanamay and Anandamay. Now among these, we all are born from the Annamay consciousness. As we grow up, we come to Pranamay, then we come to Manomay. And in our normal life, we operate somewhere between Manomay and Jnanamay. We use our intelligence sometimes we are driven by our emotions. But now what happens in pornography is that there is no concept of any relationship with anyone. There is just exploitation of a form for one's own pleasure. So it is not even Manomay. It's simply Annamay, where one is seeing a particular form with a predatory outlook. This form is for my enjoyment. And the scale of pornography industry is mind-boggling. Actually speaking, in America itself, the revenues coming from the pornography industry. In America, 3 sports are popular, largely speaking. There is soccer, there is baseball and the basketball. And there is huge money. It's like in India, IPL is very rich. There is much more money in football, basketball and baseball. And all the franchises of football, basketball and baseball combined together, whatever is their revenue, the revenue of the porn industry is 3 times more than that. It's huge. And what is happening? It's actually people are being exploited over here. So, leave alone spirituality, when people get attracted to objectifying others as just good-looking forms for my exploitation, then even at a material level, relationships can't be sustained. What to speak of at a spiritual level? Because every relationship requires give and take. The reciprocation. But here when there is objectification of the other, there is no reciprocation, there is only exploitation. And no relationship can be sustained on that platform. So it's not only spiritually detrimental, even materially, it actually breaks relationships. It destroys one's capacity to contribute to relationships. Damages, not destroys, it depends on person to person. So now, the point which I am making here is that I was talking about emotions which draw us up and emotions which draw us down. So, and I was talking about how in current culture, there are a lot of sources from which, where we are exploited by the triggering of those emotions which drag us down. By the triggering of those emotions which drag us down. And in such a culture, actually speaking, there is enormous frustration that results. If we look at, again, go back to the history. Now we say we are in the information age. Prior to that, there was more of the industrial age. Prior to that was the agricultural age. So when the economy shifted largely from the agricultural age to the industrial age, then there was large-scale relocation of people. Because migration from rural areas to urban areas. Because the urban centers became the places where people would have primarily employment and lucrative opportunities. So now, one significant result of that was that people became separated from a supportive family structure. If people for many generations have been living in one place, then they have many relatives over there. They have not just parents, grandparents, they have uncles, aunts, cousins, And so there was a whole supportive family structure. And from there, when the industrial age came, people came for lucrative opportunities to the urban areas, where the culture was much more of competition than cooperation. Because if there's a family, then we are all a family unit together. Then, if our family member becomes successful, that also contributes to the whole family. But when we come in there are urban centers, often there are a limited number of jobs, and every friend is also a potential competitor. So, the isolation started increasing. The isolation, that means the supportive family structure became lesser and lesser. And this had many results, but I'll focus on a couple which is relevant to our relationship. So because of this, the pressure on the relationship of marriage became much more. So we all need emotional satisfaction, emotional fulfillment from multiple sources. We have our elders, we have our equals, we have our juniors. And when people are not there in a supportive family structure, then there is a tremendous expectation from the relationship of marriage. And this expectation was hyped up much more by the whole movie industry, especially with the focus on romance. So now the problem is that, of course, the male-female attraction, and even dharmically the attraction is there with the marriage, that is always a fact of human life. It is a fact of human life. But when there is mass media which glamorizes it constantly, then the expectations people have become sky high. Once I got for a college program, so there, one boy, sometimes people write some funny singing statements on their t-shirts. So this boy did a statement, 90% of the world's women are beautiful. The rest 10% are in my college. So, now, what he meant, I don't know. But the sentiment over there is, when we live in a culture where the most beautiful, good-looking people are glamorized, whether it's through billboards or through movies or wherever it is, then we start comparing everything around us with that. And in real life, things are never going to be as attractive, as wonderful as they are depicted in movies. But when that becomes the framework for comparison, then we sentence ourselves to frustration. Because that is never going to be a realistic standard. So, when comparing ourselves to the models, whether they are heroes or heroines, we compare whatever is the figures and the build and all that is depicted in the media. Now, if we start comparing ourselves with them, that is a very easy way to make ourselves miserable. Because nobody is going to really shine out in that comparison. And actually speaking, even those people, those movie stars or those models, the way they look on the screen, they don't look all that good in their real life also. There is a lot of makeup. So the point which I am making through all this is that the emotional support that came from the whole supportive family structure was lost because of the shift to a distant place for employment. And then the expectation, so all the emotional support that came from various relationships, all that became concentrated now on the relationship of marriage. Further, the expectation from marriage got hiked up more because there is this whole, what is marriage? The idea is, what we see in movies in Bollywood and Hollywood. That's what marriage is. Now, sometimes some people ask me, which is better, love marriage or arranged marriage? Now, this question itself is biased. Because all marriages are meant to be based on love. No marriage can be sustained without love. But when you say that arranged marriage and love marriage, it's as if in arranged marriage there can never be any love. Now, if we wanted to rephrase the question, we could say, which is better? Infatuation marriage or arranged marriage? So the question is not that some religions or some traditional cultures are against love. That's how it's portrayed. If you say love marriage or arranged marriage, the idea is, these traditional family structures and they are so much against love. That is not the point. The point is that love has to be developed, and love is not just about an initial infatuation. It's about a lifelong commitment. It's about a lifelong commitment, and that requires sacrifice. That requires hard work. So when we are exploiting, so this dichotomy itself, love marriage, arranged marriage, this is the way we are emotionally exploited. There's nothing. It's not necessary to entertain this dichotomy in mind at all. The point is, all marriages are supposed to be based on love, but how that love develops, that may vary. So we have to check whether what is being developing is real love or it is just infatuation. And that sort of check is lost when you create this dichotomy. Okay, arranged marriage versus love marriage. All marriages are based on love, but what is real love and what is portrayed as love, or what is conceived of as love in the initial stages, that may not always be the same. So even in psychology, they have done research, and they have found that when a man and a woman are attracted to each other, what initially happens is that the body secretes various hormones. And researchers have found that there are certain hormones which are secreted when people feel romantic. I'm not just talking about the hormones related with sex. I'm just talking about in the brain also, certain hormones are secreted which give that romantic feeling. When you feel you touch someone and you feel electricity is going through your body. So all those things poets talk about. So now what happens, that is just hormonal generated stimulations. And these, so there's an article, and I think it was The Science or Nature, one of the very prestigious magazines. The title of the article was, Romance has a bench life of 9 months. Romance has a bench life of 9 months. That means what? Those initial emotions, initial emotions that make people feel so irresistibly attracted, those are secreted by hormones, and those hormones last for about 9 months in a relationship. So, whether that relationship is based on that initial infatuation, or whether that relationship is based on a deeper compatibility, where it will be sustainable, that cannot be known in the initial stages. Because we are spiritual beings, but we are in physical bodies. And if the physical bodies trigger certain emotions, they can obscure our perception. So we need patience to understand what is a sustainable attraction or what is a perishable infatuation. So this whole propaganda, often through the movies, it manipulates people emotionally. And there are multiple, now we see in today's world also, there are so many marriages that end in divorce. Divorce is a very complicated issue, and there are many reasons why divorce can happen. But one of the things is often the relationship originally is not formed on a foundation of commitment. It is not formed with the expectation that I have to commit and I have to sacrifice. The relationship is formed, yes, but it's a form of infatuation. So then that becomes a reason for a lot of frustration in the long run. So now when we this is the concluding part of the class, when we come to bhakti, now bhakti is centrally an emotion. But bhakti is not only an emotion. Bhakti is a whole way of life that develops our refined emotions. Bhakti ultimately is love for Krishna. But bhakti is also a culture. Bhakti is also a way of life that helps us to develop that love for Krishna. There is, many people have this idea of, I fell in love. So the idea of this sort of usage is that love is spontaneous. You see someone, love at first sight, you fall in love. Yes, okay, there might be that infatuation or attraction, and I am not saying that it's not possible, that through the initial infatuation there cannot be a sustainable relationship. But if that relationship is sustainable, what sustains it is not the love at first sight. What sustains is the commitment after many sights. So the point which I am making is that the idea is that love is just something which happens spontaneously. You see someone and you fall in love. But what Bhakti Yoga tells us is that emotions are not just something that happen, but emotions are something that can be systematically cultivated. And the whole process of Bhakti Yoga is meant to help us cultivate healthy emotions. So now we have a vertical relationship with Krishna and we have horizontal relationship with others in this world. So now the ideal situation is when both these relationships work symbiotically. That means our relationship with Krishna, our devotion to Krishna, it makes us more self-controlled, more mature, more tolerant, more sensitive, and thereby we can relate better with others. And similarly, our horizontal relationships, if we are having relationships with others who are also devotionally inclined, who are also devotionally inspired, then seeing them, associating with them, seeing how they are also devoted, how they are also living principled lives, that inspires us also to become devoted to Krishna. So the ideal situation is where our vertical relationship strengthens our horizontal relationship, and our horizontal relationship strengthens our vertical relationship. So for this to happen, there has to be the purification of emotions. Now Bhakti Yoga, there is the path of materialism where people think that, if I just make the right arrangements, then I'll enjoy life. Enjoy means my emotions will be very, very joyful. Now often emotions get us into trouble. So when emotions get us into trouble, there are some people who feel that emotions themselves are the cause of trouble. And such people, they feel all emotions are false, all emotions are illusory, and therefore we should reject all emotions. And that is, if you consider pendulum, one is emotions are the way for life. Just go according to your emotions. That is what is called as karma marga. The other extreme is emotions are the obstacle, emotions are the trap. Just get rid of all emotions. That is the pendulum going to the other extreme. That is the jnana marga, where all emotions are considered illusion. And everything that stimulates emotion is also considered an illusion. So one of the things that most strongly stimulates emotions is form. So all forms are considered illusion. Even the form of God is considered to be illusion. So the whole idea is this philosophy, which is called as impersonalism, then it's considered nobody is a person. That is a reaction. It's a reactionary philosophy which goes to the other extreme after getting burnt by material emotions. But what Bhakti Yoga tells us is that the problem is not emotions. The problem is the irregulation of emotions. Is that the emotions are unregulated. And that is the problem. So Bhakti Yoga tells us that if we direct our emotions towards Krishna, and then through Krishna we direct it towards others, then those same emotions can become the source of great fulfillment, great satisfaction in our life. Now, the process of Bhakti Yoga involves doing certain activities that purify our emotions. Purify means that just like if there is impure water, then we put it to a filter or something, and the dirt comes out, dirt is left behind, and then the clean water comes out. So like that, within the emotions that are there in our mind, there in our heart, those emotions, there are certain emotions which are impure, which would drag us down. So Bhakti Yoga purifies us of those emotions. And the higher, the richer emotions start getting developed more and more. They become stronger. And when we practice Bhakti, there are emotions which will inspire us onward. But at the same time, we also need to use our intelligence. For example, we practice bhakti. Sometimes when we come to the temple, we see the deities, we chant the holiness, we feel that this is so wonderful, I feel so peaceful, I feel so joyful. And at other times we are chanting, we take out the beads and say, are there 108 or 1008 beads? Mala is not getting it. Mala is not getting gold. So, why does this happen? For this we need to recognize the nature of the mind. The mind has sought pleasure in many, many different objects. Now, if you look at our own life, we have had so many different habits, so many different hobbies, so many different interests. The mind has sought pleasure in many, many different objects. And over a period of time, none of them have given pleasure. So because of that, the mind has developed a habit of restlessness. That's why, as soon as the mind comes to some particular thing, it will do it for something as long as it seems new, as long as it is something to worth exploring. And after some time, the mind will just flicker away to something else. And even when the mind comes to Krishna, now Krishna can offer us the supreme fulfillment. Sabaguna Agar Rama, Sabasukha Sagar Rama. So the Lord is the ocean of all qualities and He is the reservoir of supreme happiness. But because of the past habit of restlessness of the mind, even when the mind comes to Krishna, okay, initially it's good, but afterwards, what next? What next? What next? And the mind goes on to something else. And because the mind is looking for something else, then even when Krishna is there, we feel no taste in Krishna. So, at such times, we have to use our intelligence to stay fixed in bhakti. And I talked about how Freud said that there is an ocean of turbulent emotion and a small boat of reason. Now that is true. That is, in the Gita's language, it is called as Rajoguna and Sattoguna. Rajoguna is the mode of passion, where there are very wild emotions. And Sattoguna is the mode of goodness, where intelligence is there. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. So, yes, the influence of Rajoguna is very forceful on us. And it can shake us up. The mode of passion can just overthrow our intelligence and make us do our wrong things. Krishna says, Indriyanam vicharatam yanmano anuvidhyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurna vimamvasi. He says, if the senses focus on a particular object, our intelligence may just get swept away, just as a boat is swept away by the waves in an ocean. It's 2.67 in Gita. So, now the bhakti culture centers on trying as much as possible to live in the mode of goodness. So we wake up early in the morning, we try to have a regulated life, we try to eat regulated food. Although at one level, this may seem to be restriction. So many rules, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So it may seem like deprivation. Where is my freedom? Where is my enjoyment? But that's a misunderstanding. Because there are two kinds of freedom. There is freedom for and there is freedom from. Freedom for means freedom for doing whatever I want to do. That's one kind of freedom. And freedom from is something which our culture doesn't talk about at all. So freedom for means somebody may say that, no, I want the freedom to eat whatever I like. I go to this hotel, I like this, I need that, I like that. I want freedom for doing whatever I want. That seems very nice, but that ends up making us a slave of our tongue. We just can't regulate ourselves. Even when we want to do some other work, suddenly the desire to eat comes and we go there and eat. Recently, one devotee doctor was telling me that, he's an ENT specialist. So he told me that he was one day called on emergency from the hospital, and he said that some person had eaten chicken. And he ate so much chicken that his whole esophagus up to the neck had got filled. And he had to bring the scope and he had to actually take out all the chicken for 15 minutes. So that they could come to the stomach. It was just a few years ago here in Australia itself. So what happens is here, the person may think, I want freedom to eat as much as I want. But then, the simple fact of life is, we can never enjoy as much as we want. The body's capacity is limited. Even if I want to enjoy, my stomach's capacity is limited. Similarly, with respect to all forms of sense gratification, all forms of material enjoyment, our capacity itself is limited. So first is, we can never have unlimited freedom. Never. It's just not possible. Sex is glamorized so much in the movies and the novels, but the body's capacity to enjoy sex is limited. It's finite, like a sponge, it gives out water on squeezing, and then the body gives out some pleasure. But then with every squeeze, the sponge's water emitting capacity decreases. And after that you squeeze and you get just pain. There's no water coming out. So like that, the body's capacity to give pleasure is limited. And this is often not depicted at all in the medium. So then all that happens is people think, oh, those people in the movies are enjoying so much, I'm not enjoying. So probably something is wrong with my sex life. And you go to a sexologist and then get counseling and read books about how to improve the sex life. It's all based on a fundamental misconception. The misconception is that we can enjoy unlimitedly at the material level. It's just not possible. Even if there were no cultural restrictions, even if there are no moral restrictions, even if it is a completely free culture, still we will never break free from our body limitations. The body will limit our enjoyment. So freedom for is not possible. Freedom for enjoying as much as we want is just not possible. But there's another kind of freedom, that is freedom from. Freedom from means freedom from the desire to enjoy in an unhealthy way. Imagine, say, there are two students or two young people. They're staying in some sort of hostel or together in a community place, and this is their workplace. Now, along the way, there's a cigarette shop, or there's an alcohol shop, whatever. Now, one of the friends has never drunk alcohol, and the other has drunk a few times. Now, this first friend, because he has never drunk alcohol, the thought will not come in the mind. He just pass by and just go and do the work. But for the person who has drunk once, twice, thrice, what happens as soon as he passes by the shop? Maybe I should go and take a drink. Maybe not now, but when I'm coming back, I'll drink. And then throughout the day, when I go back, I'll be drinking. And then when the person drinks more, and gradually what happens, it's like when we become addicted to something, it's like there's an invisible rope between our minds and that object. And that rope keeps pulling us. So initially the thought of that comes only when you pass the shop. But as when it becomes attached, when you're coming out of the hostel, only the thought of the shop is there. And then sometimes there are some people who are addicted so much that when they wake up first thing, oh, I have to drink. I hope in the long run to write a book on addiction. So I read about one alcohol addictions story, how he eventually became free. But he said, one night I just woke up with an irresistible urge to drink. And it was late midnight and I just got up and I went out. And I went to my car and my car just broke down. Then it was cold night, I walked out to walked all the way almost 500 meters in the cold night to go to the nearest alcohol shop. And then when I went there, the alcohol which I wanted to drink, there are different alcohols also. There's wine and all that. I don't know the names also. But whatever. He said that was not there. So then I thought that let me go to another shop. And then he had to go to another shop which is almost 1 kilometer away. Night, cold, walking. And then as he was walking along, suddenly he slipped and fell. And I just bang, fell on his body. At that time, just lying there looking at the sky. And suddenly, what am I doing? What am I doing? Probably all my friends, they are sitting peacefully in their beds. Here I am, trembling in the cold and lying miserably on the ground over here. So is this really enjoyment? So we often think frustration or misery is caused by restriction in our enjoyment. If somebody doesn't allow me to enjoy, that is what is causing me frustration, that is causing misery. But often, misery is caused much greater by the domination of the desire to enjoy. When the desire to enjoy dominates us, then it makes us run here and there and there, and then that makes us miserable. So, today's culture makes us think that freedom for is what is important. But the Bhagavad Gita talks about a different kind of freedom. Trividam narkasyedam dwaram nashana atmana. त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनात्मना कामः क्रोधस्तथा लोभस् तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत् एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिर्नरः आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयस्ततो याति परां गतिम्. Krishna says that lust, anger and greed, they are like the three gates to hell. And he says, एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय. Krishna says, it's not that you restrict yourself from indulgence, it's just become free from them, become liberated from them. So, freedom will never give us any peace. At least when it comes to this gross material form of enjoyment, it will only cause us more and more agitation and addiction. Freedom from the desire to eat whatever I like, whatever passes my eye. Freedom from the desire to lust after every woman that I see. Freedom from the desire to crave for every gadget that anybody flashes in front of me. Actually, after this constant craving that comes up, that craving after some time becomes sickening. It just sucks our mental energy. So when we live a regulated life, it may seem like it's deprivation of freedom, but actually it is freedom. Because it frees us from so many drives that actually don't bring happiness, that only cause misery, and temporarily from that misery we consider as happiness. So it's not happiness. So bhakti will actually bring us freedom. Bhakti will actually help us to experience emotional fulfillment. Because to experience emotional fulfillment, we need the emotions to be pure. Otherwise, you may get some gratification, some temporary titillation of the senses, some release of the hormones. That will get, but there will be no emotional fulfillment at all. Emotional fulfillment comes when we have some capacity to control our emotions. As I said, all relationships require commitment. If we are ruled by our emotions alone, then we cannot sustain commitments. We cannot sustain relationships, we cannot maintain commitments. And then relationships also break apart. So the more we commit ourselves to our vertical relationship with Krishna, the more our capacity to commit ourselves in our horizontal relationships will also increase. Because essentially, when we commit ourselves to our relationship with Krishna, we come more and more to the mode of goodness. We gain more and more control over our emotions. And then, that control enables us to benefit in all our relationships. So in that way, real emotional fulfillment comes through devotion. Devotion to Krishna, and through that, devotion to all our relatives and friends and loved ones in relationship with Krishna. I'll summarize, then we can have a few questions. I started by talking about how Lord Ram tells Lakshmana, emotions are very good, but we should choose those emotions that help us rise upwards, that take us along the path of Dharma, not those which cause us to go downwards, away from Dharma. And then I give the example of how Bharat was able to control the natural emotion of anger by remembering his upward connection with Ram, that this will displease Ram, so I will not do it. And then I came to the contemporary society and discussed how, based on Freud's insights, that people have such strong emotion that their reason can be completely overshadowed by that. So the advertising industry changed its pitch from how good a product is to how good it will make you feel. And such advertisement basically exploits our emotions. I talk about that advertisement which is basically insult to both male and female intelligence. And then I talked about further, even in the food, the fast foods, how they manipulate us by observing what kind of neurochemical activity takes place in the brain. And they fill us with junk food. And then I talked about, again going back to relationships, how the shift from the agriculture to the industrial civilization, it removed the supportive family structure, increased the pressure on the marital relationship. And further this pressure was hiked up because of the hype in the movie industry. And that's why the whole idea that relationships should be formed based on what is called as love, but what often turns out to be infatuation. What is actually infatuation? That relationship should be formed based on that. then that leads to a lot of frustration. So relationships can be sustained only when there is commitment. And commitment means that we are not just driven by our emotions. We have a higher intelligence which makes us persevere even when the emotions are not there. And then I came to how bhakti helps us to regulate our emotions by purifying them. So our vertical and horizontal relationships can and should be symbiotic. And in bhakti also, when we don't feel the emotions that connect us with Krishna, that make us feel good in bhakti, at that time we need to understand it's just the mind's default habit of restlessness. Krishna is attractive, Krishna is a source of pleasure, but the mind is just shifting off because of its many past experiences of objects giving only fleeting pleasure. But if we persevere in the process of bhakti, gradually we experience higher satisfaction and the connection with Krishna will purify us. And then last I talked about, when we practice bhakti, it may seem that there are so many rules which choke our freedom. But there is freedom for and there is freedom from. And freedom for doing whatever we want to do, that is never possible. Even if there are no cultural, social, moral restrictions, still there is a body restriction. And then, so rather than seeking something which is not possible actually, and which ends in entanglement, which ends in misery. I give the example of that alcoholic falling on the ground in the night, in the cold night. So, misery is caused not by the restriction in desire, but by domination by desire. So, bhakti, the rules and regulations in it, they actually give us a different kind of freedom. Freedom from. Freedom from being enslaved by any and every desire that the culture wants to inject in us. Buy this, eat this, touch this, watch this. And in that way, we become enslaved. But by the practice of bhakti, our richer, purer emotions come up. And the more we commit ourselves to the practice of bhakti, the more not only does our bhakti increase, but our mastery over our emotions increases, and that can help us becoming committed in all our relationships. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes.
My question is based on the beginning part of the talk when you gave examples of Lakshmana and Karna. So, being cognizant of one's dharma often mixed with emotional turmoil leads to like cognitive dissonance. So,
Being cognizant of
one's own dharma and mixed with emotional turmoil, it leads to cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
So, my question is in two parts. How to deal with this cognitive dissonance spiritually, and two, whether the approach differs for personal and professional situations.
The question is that the awareness of dharma and the presence of emotions, these two often pull us in two different directions, and that cause what psychologists call as cognitive dissonance. Resonance, most of you must have heard. Resonance means when two frequencies come together and sound comes out. Dissonance means when two are separate. So cognitive dissonance means we are trying to hold two contradictory thoughts in our head. We just don't know what to do. So this happens when we are having knowledge of dharma and we are also having, say, adharmic emotions. So how do we deal with this? And is the strategy for dealing with this different in personal and professional situations? Firstly, it is not that cognitive dissonance happens only because we are trying to live according to dharma. Even people who are materialistic, it's not that the mind troubles only devotees. The mind troubles only materialistic people. Why? Because devotees may have so many desires to control. But materialistic people have so many desires to fulfill. And they just can't fulfill all their desires. Our body capacity is limited, our financial capacity is limited, our social situation is limited. So everybody is troubled by their mind. And even materialistic people go through cognitive dissonance. Should I take up this job or that job? Should I watch this movie or that movie? And sometimes people just get paralyzed over trivial choices. There's one book written by a psychologist called Barry Schwartz, The Paradox of Choice. How more is less. So he says how some people they go for shopping, a simple thing such as the jeans. And sometimes there's a record it seems that one person spent 3 months to shop one jean. And there are, it's just, so the point which I'm making is cognitive dissonance is there everywhere in between. should I shop this, should I purchase this. Now, as I said 3 months, it was not just 3 months going for a 1 hour every day or something like that. 3 months continuously going there. So I had to go to all the shops and try to find out which jeans I should purchase. So cognitive dissonance is simply a fact of material existence. Because we all have different desires, even materialists have different desires. And we all get pulled in different directions. And largely it happens in Rajoguna. Krishna says, Aneka chitta vibhranta mohajala samavruta prasaktaha kama bhogeshu patanti narkeshu. Aneka chitta vibhranta. By many desires, chitta vibhranta. The consciousness is ripped in many different directions. So that is a feature when the mind is controlling us and is dragging us with its various desires in different directions. So now, how do we deal with this? Firstly, it is very important for us to strengthen our intelligence on a regular basis, to sharpen our intelligence. Because if our intelligence is not very strong, then although we may feel this is right and this is wrong, if you see Prabhupada's presentation of Krishna consciousness was not based so much on this is right and this is wrong. Now this is allowed and this is forbidden. That was not the stress. The stress was what will give you real happiness. You are not the body or the soul. Bodily enjoyment will not give you happiness. So now if we do not keep the philosophy in the foreground of our consciousness, we do not study Shastra, then we start getting caught by the worldly propaganda. And we start thinking, oh, happiness is here, but I am not allowed to enjoy it. So, the sadhaka's problem is that we are meant to seek Krishna and stay away from Maya. But Krishna is invisible and Maya is ultra visible. So that's why we need Shastra Chakshu. We need eyes of scripture. So when we regularly study Shastra, it doesn't just give us the knowledge of this is what I should do, this is what I should not do. It reminds us why I should do this, why I should not do this. And in that, when we have Shastric knowledge, then what we should not do does not seem like deprivation. We see it as protection. I should not do this because this will harm me. So, for dealing with any cognitive dissonance, each of us has our own pet definitions of happiness. We think, if only I could do this, I will enjoy. If only I could do this, I will enjoy. If only I could do this, I will enjoy. So studying Shastra is not just a ritual of opening the Bhagavad Gita or opening the Bhagavatam and going through its ways. That's important. But what we should do is let the Shastric knowledge challenge our mind's pet definitions of enjoyment. The mind says, this is what will make you happy. Now, is this really true? Let me find some scripture verse which challenges this. Let me contemplate on this. So when we look at what is there in our mind, what are the battles we are facing, and see what section of scripture speaks to us, and dwell on that section, then we will get the intellectual strength to deal with that situation. And the principle remains the same for personal and professional, although the specific practices may vary. That means, in a devotee community, we may behave in a particular way. In a professional setting, we may, by doing specific interactions, we may deal with it in a different way. So that is basically time, place, circumstance. But the basic principle remains that although there is conflict, there is a tug of war within us, the fact is that the tug of war is inevitable for everyone. And if we strengthen our knowledge of Dharma, by not just that this is the right thing to do, but why this is the right thing to do, by studying Shastra, then we have a far greater chance of being successful in winners in the tug of war. And if you also do sadhana regularly, sadhana means not just we move the weeds, but we remember Krishna. Bring our consciousness in contact with Krishna. That gives the higher trace. Param drishtvani vartate. And then we will be able to deal with the situation we will be able to survive in the tug of war and gradually we'll get the upper hand. So till that happens, it's important that we always try as much as possible to keep ourselves in a safe environment. That means, if we are in devotee association, then we can use our ego in bhakti yoga. How is that? I said whichever social circle we belong to, we want to be accepted and respected in that social circle. So if we are in a devotee circle, we want to be thought of as good devotees. So at least because of that desire, we will not do wrong activities. That is not the noblest motive for not doing wrong activities. But in a war, any weapon works. Or which weapon should I use? Whichever works. We are fighting a war. So association of devotees, at a higher level, we want to please devotees. And that's why we want to do the right things and we want to avoid the wrong things. But even if that emotion is not very strongly there in our consciousness right now, that is, I don't want devotees to think that I am a lazy devotee or a loose devotee or I am a bad devotee. So because of that I don't do wrong. No problem. Actually that's what is protecting us. So it's important that we try to keep ourselves in a protected environment. And by that protected environment will make the chances of our accidentally or impulsively losing that inner war, it makes chances much lesser. And we'll be in a safer position. So like Bhaktivedanta was arranged that all of you have a series of flats which all of you stay together. That is a very good protective environment. And of course when you get married you have your family. That also is a protection. And in that way, when we keep ourselves in a protected environment, the practice of bhakti doesn't have to be more difficult than what it is. Yes, it is going to be difficult, there are challenges, but a safer environment makes it much easier to practice bhakti. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes. One more thing? Yeah.
We talked about emotions of one time ago, how to deal with emotions of other people, like, friends, relatives, parents, and devotees, three categories. Can you explain how to deal with emotions of others?
Okay. So how do we deal with emotions of others, especially friends, relatives, and devotees? There are two broad principles for any relationship, for all relationships in general. First is that, we don't want to hurt anyone. We try as much as possible, we don't want to not hurt anyone. Second is, we should know that we can never please everyone. Although we don't want to displease everyone, it is a fact of life that we will not be able to please everyone. So, if we try to please everyone, the only thing that will happen is we will make ourselves very miserable. Very miserable. So then, we have to, in our relationships, prioritize. That means, among my relationship, this relationship is very important for me. And then this relationship is at a second level. This relationship is at a third level. And then, accordingly, allocate our energy, allocate our resources, allocate our time, allocate our thought to try to satisfy those, to try to act in a way that is appropriate for that relationship. So that means when I say prioritization, it doesn't mean necessarily that we don't consider some people, we don't value other people, disregard other people, but it's just that we are all limited. And acknowledging our finiteness, acknowledging our limitedness also requires humility. To think that I can please everyone, that is also a form of arrogance actually. Although I may want to please everyone, I will not be able to. So we have to find out which are the most important relationships and focus on what all I need to do to sustain those relationships. And then we have second level, third level. We can have various levels of relationships and find out what all are the things which we can do in those relationships to satisfy those people and to maintain those relationships. And it's every relationship will have its ups and downs. Sometimes some relationship will become very stormy. So, at such times, tam sidiksha swabharata, tolerate. Tolerance means what? It doesn't mean that we just passively accept whatever another person is doing. It means that we don't let our knee-jerk reactions determine our responses. We check ourselves and we think soberly, what would be the best way I can react. So, it's good to have some time on a regular basis where we take inventory of our relationships. Take inventory means what? Okay, I have this commitment, this commitment, this commitment. How much I have fulfilled which all of my commitments? And sometimes circumstances may work in such a way that we have to do more in one particular relationship. Sometimes you have to do more in another relationship. One problem with balancing is that we expect balance to be like one straight formula. Okay, morning I'll do this, afternoon I'll do this, evening I'll do this. Monday I'll do this, Tuesday I'll do this, Wednesday I'll do this, Thursday I'll do this. If we expect everything to work like a formula, life is not like that. So balance has to be dynamic, not static. What that means is, suppose you are riding a bicycle. Now, the normal balance stage of the bicycle is the vertical stage. But then, if the road ends and you have to move right, then the balance stage of the vehicle, of the cycle, will be the right tilted stage. But if you stay just in the right tilted stage, you just go around in a circle. Isn't it? So after you turn, then you again make it straight and then move onwards. And then later on when you find, okay, I want to go this direction, then and I find that there's a left road over here, then I turn again, now I tilt left, and then I move that way. So, although the normal balance stage for cycle is the vertical stage, but depending on time-place circumstance, to keep moving forwards, one may have to tilt left or tilt right. So like that, we can have a broad pattern for our relationships. But then there are situations when certain relationships will demand more time. And neither we nor other devotees should think that this person is now become a loose devotee or this person has become, because say if suppose there's an emergency in our family, then we have to spend more time with the family. So then we should do that. We should not think of that as mundane or anything like that. That's our duty. We should do it. And even if you read Lamrit, Prabhupada, when he was a Grahastha, at that time there was a time when one of his acquaintances in Allahabad, he met and he said at that time Swamiji's main concern was, how can I earn money? Although he was a very spiritual man and he was devoted to God, but that time his thought was, how can I earn money? How can I earn money? So Prabhupada was at a particular phase in his life, and that time financial concerns, he had to take care of his wife, he had to take care of his children, he had to get them educated, married. So that was important. So we shouldn't think in a very superficial way that just because there are certain situations when I require more time for my family, that means my bhakti has decreased now. Nor should other devotees think like that. Now everybody will go through situations where there will be times when our material obligations will require more time, and we should give that. So as I said, we go to the example, says there sometimes I have to turn left, sometimes I turn right. But overall, I am moving by the bicycle in the right direction. So we can't expect in our relationship a static balance. We dynamic balance. Dynamic balance means that in certain situations, when the circumstances demand, we can and we should spend more time in some relationships, and other relationships can be put in the background for that time. And other times we can, as I said, first shift the cycle left and shift it right. So like that, if we have a broad goal in mind, obviously like a person has no, I have to go in this direction, then you can turn left, turn right and still keep moving on that right direction. So like that, if we are clearly purposeful about what we want to do in our life, then we can balance our relationships. So to summarize, first is we can create a priority about which relationships are most important, and then accordingly position our relationship at different levels of importance and plan how to give how much time and energy for which relationship in a broad sense. But secondly, without becoming attached to the plan, before we know that real life works in dynamic ways, so we are open to adjustment. So we have a broad schedule, but within that schedule, when it's demanded, we remain flexible so that we can act as the relationships require. This is a big and I would say more practical subject. So each devotee will have to individually decide how to go about it. But this is the broad principle I can say. Yes, please. Okay. You ask the question. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Bro, we come across this doubt.
Little loudly.
We come across this doubt or this question from many people. I myself also came to Australia as a student and then was working, and then many are still student and they are working and there's no family support to provide basic facilities which saves their time. So the question comes is that I am already doing so many things which are my priority. Means why I have to give certain priority? I'm trying to make my basic end meet being in Australia, somehow study, work, whatever. Then I don't have what your bhakti will give me as a matter of help, or Krishna consciousness or spiritual life can give me as a matter of help. I'm already struggling with the basic things. So if you can comment on that.
Yeah. The question is, often our family, our professional requirements, they themselves comprise such a big burden on our time and energy that it's difficult to cope with them. And bhakti, rather than contribute something, seems to make a further demand on our time and energy. So what does bhakti contribute actually? When we are already stressed with a lot of demands on our time. Yes, it's true that all of us are busy, and at an initial or surface level, it will appear that bhakti is actually demanding more time from us. But what bhakti does is bhakti takes our time, but it helps us to regulate our inner world, regulate our thoughts, regulate our desires, regulate our reactions to situations. Often, we tend to evaluate time in terms of the activities that we do. I answered this yesterday also in the evening. We tend to evaluate time in terms of the activities that we do. But actually, our energy is consumed a lot by our thoughts. So, for example, if I'm very stressed, I may do some work, but I may do it for 3 hours and just not get it. If I was relaxed, I might complete the same work in 10 minutes or maybe half an hour. And what to speak of direct devotees recognizing this. Even there are many companies nowadays, they are recognizing that in workplaces, work burnout is an increasing problem. So many companies require people that you have to take some breaks, you have to take some leaves. And especially in America, I don't know how much it is in Australia, many companies themselves organize seminars for stress management or seminars for yoga, seminars for meditation. And they recognize that if the employees are less stressed, then they will be more productive. And although externally organizing a 2-day seminar or giving some time for meditation or something like that, that may seem to be like taking further time, but eventually it saves time because it makes us more efficient. So even from the material perspective, leave alone whatever spiritual gains we get by practicing bhakti, even from the material perspective, our productivity is not determined by our activity alone. Our productivity is not determined by our activity alone. Okay, we don't have a fan here. Now, a fan, sometimes a fan moves round and round and round, but it gets nowhere. Like that, sometimes our mind runs round and round. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this, I have to do that. Hey, but I was supposed to do that, I forgot to take that. And I run back and get it. Hey, but I missed the bus. And then I come back and I take a taxi. And then, oh, I forgot my purse, I forgot my wallet. And then we find that often activity does not translate into productivity. And this is a big problem, especially when we live in a passionate culture and have a passionate mind. The external culture is frenzied and internal mind is also hyperactive, it is also frenzied. So, goodness, coming to sattva-guna, coming to the mode of goodness, will actually increase our productivity. So it's like somebody is working on a computer and the computer has got a virus. And somebody comes and says, sir, your computer has got a virus, you have to remove that virus. He says, no, I don't have even one moment to spare. I have so much work to do on my computer. So we do all the work, but that work will be useless if the virus is not removed. So like that, in our mind there is a virus of stress, there is a virus of anxiety, there is a virus of so many unwanted emotions, there is a virus of depression, there is a virus of nowadays there's people have many, anxiety syndromes. So there are so many viruses like that that sap our energy. So taking time out to calm our mind, to clear our mind, is going to help us even materially. Many devotees who work in very influential positions in companies, well, they told me that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we never thought that we could do so much in one day, as we are able to do routinely now. Why? Because in the past the emotions were so turbulent, you start doing things, but at the end of the day you don't get much done. So there is a lot of activity, but there is not much productivity. On the other hand, when we cultivate goodness, when we spend some time to purify our mind, then that our activity becomes more purposeful and more fruitful. It translates into productivity. So it's a matter of going beyond looking superficially at what is taking how much time in terms of external activities, but looking at how much is my attention, how much is my concentration, how much is my actually productivity through the whole frenzy of activity. So those people who are having this as the primary reason, that there's too much pressure on their time, we can tell them this. People who are more introspective, already in goodness, then we can talk about the ultimate purpose to life also. And even if you manage with all your workload, what is the point of it at the end? That is a philosophical reason for turning towards Krishna. But even if a person turns towards bhakti for a utilitarian reason, that is also, any way a person comes to Krishna, that is fine. Krishna says, 4 categories of people come to me. They are the distressed, the inquisitive, the seekers of wealth, and the knowledgeable. Mostly in Kali Yuga, those 4 categories are the distressed, the distressed, the distressed, the distressed. Yes, there will be some inquisitiveness, there will be some seeking of knowledge, but it's primarily distress that makes people, I want some relief. It's fine. So we should be able to present bhakti in a way by which we don't make it seem that bhakti has so many demands. Yes, bhakti has demands, but what bhakti offers us is far more than what it demands from us. We present it properly, then that misperception of bhakti won't be there. Yeah. Okay.
Hare Krishna. When you were saying get the emotion, they are good, but by the knowledge of dharma, and you say by one make the decision through the intelligence, like whatever the knowledge he acquires. And does the mode of nature affect on that intelligence while making the decision? How?
Okay. The question is that we are supposed to choose the right emotions using our intelligence so that our emotions take us towards dharma and not away from dharma. And though the modes of intelligence, or the modes of nature, affect our intelligence. Yes, definitely. Krishna talks about intelligence in the 3 modes in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. From 18.31 to 30, 18.30 then 30 to 33. Then 34, 35, 36. Or 30 to 32 he talks about intelligence. And 33 to 35 he talks about determination. So intelligence is more in terms of perception. And determination is in terms of action. So we can perceive things in goodness, passion, ignorance. And then we can act in goodness, passion, ignorance. So intelligence in goodness, Krishna says that intelligence which helps us understand what is right, what is wrong. That is which explains that dharma, this is adharma, this is bandham, this is moksha. This is that is intelligence in the mode of goodness. And then is intelligence in the mode of passion is that which gets confused. Adharma, and then intelligence in the back, is this dharma or is that adharma? Is this right? Is that right? We get confused with passion. And ignorance, he says, adharmam dharmamitiya manyate tamasavruta sarvarthan viparitamsya buddhisa partamasi. We start thinking right to be wrong and wrong to be right. That is intelligence in the mode of ignorance. So, see, when we say that some people are unintelligent, actually no one is unintelligent. It is that their intelligence is misdirected. So, we need to study scripture, and especially major decisions that we make in our life, we should not make them on the rush. Because during the course of the day, inevitably we will go into passion. Because our lives are fast-paced, our environments are passionate, and we will be in the action mode. And passion in and of itself is not bad. But when passion becomes the prominent or only mode by which we make decisions, then it is problematic. So if you have to make major decisions in life, we can't make them on the move. We have to sit down, calm ourselves, deliberate deeply and take decisions. So yes, especially if we are living in a passionate environment, then our intelligence also gets blurred. And when the intelligence gets blurred, although we may think, I have considered this factor, but there will be much that we will have missed out. And we may end up taking wrong decisions. That's why many times, see, generally speaking, there are some situations when what is right and what is wrong is clear. But usually speaking, the mind doesn't directly make us do the wrong thing. The mind rationalizes the wrong. If we look at the Ramayana, now Kaikeyi is getting Ram exiled. Ram had never even once offended Kaikeyi. Ram respected her as like his own mother. And yet for Kaikeyi to do that was horrendous. Now how did Kaikeyi do that? She created based on, we can say that it was just a bad association of mantra. Yes, but that is to mantra poisoned her mind. But what for, Kaikeyi also had her intelligence. What happened to her intelligence? Because of the influence of mantra, Kaikeyi, based on that, her intelligence created an imaginary Bharata who applauded her actions. She was thinking that everybody is thinking, I am so selfish, I am so power hungry, but actually I am doing all this out of my love for my son. I am protecting him, and nobody is understanding my great maternal love by which I am protecting. That's how she rationalized the whole thing. And because she had rationalized in that way, nobody's arguments made sense to her. Neither Dasharat's pleading, nor Sumantra was the minister, his request, nor even the Vashishta Rishi was a royal sage, not even his instruction, nothing made sense to her. So the only time her rationalization exploded was when Bharata himself came. And she told Bharata, there was this great danger to the right to your kingdom and I protected you. Bharata was shocked. He says, what did you do? He said, I cannot accept that you are my mother. He says, you are the goddess of destruction descended into our dynasty to destroy our dynasty. So, the point which I am making is that Kaikeyi, she used her intelligence to come up with the plan of how to get the kingdom. But her intelligence was sabotaged. So, usually, it's not that the mind directly makes us do wrong things. Sometimes it is clear, we know this is a temptation, I should not indulge it, but we indulge it. But quite often, the mind sabotages our intelligence. And we think we are doing the right thing. That's why major decisions should not be taken without consent. Going back to Kaikeyi's example, her mistake was twofold. First was she heard mantra very submissively. We should not hear only materialistic people so submissively, first of all. But even if she heard, she would not avoid it. And the important thing is, she should at least have consulted someone else. Or to take such a drastic decision based on just one person's input. It's terrible. Sometimes we may be practicing bhakti and suddenly we go on some site and we read something terrible about Krishna consciousness, about devotees and think, hey, what am I doing associating with such people? What am I doing? Let me just give it up. Yes, there may be some truth in it, there is a lot of lies in it, a lot of half-truths in it. But just don't take a decision based on one perception. Seek some clarification from some people, understand things and then make a decision. So, generally major decisions we should not take on the rush. Okay, whatever our thoughts, we take it, calm down, get an alternative perspective, deliberate on both things, and then take a decision. Then we will be able to regulate our emotions effectively. Okay, we're not going to take too many questions now. Okay, how many questions are there? 1, 2. Okay, 2 questions. We'll try to finish out this one.
Prabhuji, it's a
for a person to get connected to Krishna, if an addicted person is there, to get connected to Krishna, he need to give up his addictions. So how can one give up addictions and get connected to Krishna?
Okay. If a person is addicted, that person has to give up the addictions to become connected to Krishna.
Yeah, I mean to say, if he's addicted to bad habits.
Yeah, he's addicted to bad habits. He has to give up the bad habits to connect with Krishna. So how can one give up connect? One give up one's addictions. No, we should not think that to become connected with Krishna one has to give up the addictions. Rather, becoming connected with Krishna is the way to give up addictions. If we make giving up the negative as the prerequisite for taking up the positive, then it will be very difficult for us to give up the negative. So, when we are practicing bhakti also, our focus should not be on what all I have to give up. If we think like that, we will think better give up bhakti only. It's too demanding. What we should focus on is, what am I going to get? Or rather than thinking what I am supposed to, what all I have to give up, we can focus on these devotees. At least they seem to be intelligent people. And they must be getting something because of which they are giving up all this. So what is that something? Let me find it out. So even if we don't want to make a lifelong commitment, we can just say that, okay, I have tried material life. We have all tried material life. Maybe not all the forms of enjoyment material life. We tried a reasonable amount of material enjoyment. We never tried out spiritual life. So let's try it out. These devotees must be getting something because of which they are giving up so much. So rather than focusing on the point that I have to give up my addictions, we focus on I want to connect with Krishna. See, saying no is never pleasant. Whether it is to a relationship or whether it is inside us only to an emotion, it's never pleasant. It's difficult to say. And if we define our bhakti in terms of all the no's that we have to say to, then we will end up saying no to bhakti only. So we have to focus on what all I am saying yes to. So now don't worry so much about that I have to give up my bad habits. Focus on how I can connect with Krishna more and more. And the more we connect with Krishna, what will essentially happen is our mind and our heart will become filled with Krishna. And then we don't have to give the bad habits, they will just go away. So if we think of it's like, if I take a glass and I think I have to create a vacuum in the glass. Because I want to remove all the air from the glass. Now removing all the air from the glass is not easy. Even if I create a vacuum, at any moment it may get filled again. But if instead my focus is not on removing the air per se, but instead I fill it with water. Once it becomes filled with water, the air will automatically go out. So, like that, if we focus on thinking I have to give up this, I have to give up that, I have to give up that, it's very difficult to get the determination to it and it's very difficult to sustain it also. But if we focus on filling our life with bhakti, with devotional activities, devotional relationships, devotional desires, then automatically the material things will go away.
Well, you were mentioning about the difference between the love marriage and the arranged marriage. When you mentioned about how there's a difference between the love and the infatuation. Can you please explain the subtle difference between these two and how also one knows that if he's actually or he or she is actually in love or is that an infatuation?
Okay. So I mentioned that there's a difference between love and infatuation. So how do we know the difference between the two? See, the primary thing would be sustainability. Sustainability means what? That infatuation is based on initial perceptions, initial attractions, and although it seems irresistible initially, sometimes that which seems irresistible initially, after some time the same thing goes to intolerable after. I can't live without you, people say, and then after some time, I can't live with you. It becomes like that. So that's why, what is sustainability? Sustainability means, if you want to form a relationship, as I said, it has to be based on commitment, not as infatuation. So the first level of commitment is not acting on the relationship immediately. See, many times nowadays there is a culture of living together. And people say that, when we marry, and often marriages don't last. So the marriages don't last, so better instead of taking a leap into that, let us first live together. So we'll try out how the relationship works. And then we will decide whether we will continue the relationship or not, whether the relationship is sustainable or not. Now the problem with this idea is that the relationships are based on trust. And statistics also show that marriages which were preceded by, many statistics have shown that marriages which are preceded by live-in, they don't last for long. Because basically the trust is not there. You know, if this person could live with me, this person might live with someone else also. That person, the commitment, the faithfulness to the relationship, the trust is not there. And more importantly, the whole approach becomes very superficial. Like the marriage, we start thinking of marriage like a adjustable product. Use and throw product. If it works well and good, if it doesn't work, just throw it away. So rather than that, if one acts patiently in that relationship, that means rather than thinking that, so basically why do people want to live together? Primarily it is because they want to take the relationship to the physical level. They want to try out the full relationship, and then that makes the relationship largely reduced down to the physical level itself. But when there is, traditionally there are support systems which could arrange for arranged marriages. And many say, now if there are support systems like that which can help in arrangement, that's good. But if they're not there, or if there are attraction, then there has to be patience. Rather than acting on the relationship, yes, there can be some interactions under regulation. I was told that His Holiness Devamrit Maharaj is a 2-year courting period, in which in first year the devotees, they meet under a chaperon, and then later on they can meet together. So that is something which is very good. What it does is, we also get to check how sustainable is the attraction. And then after that, if the attraction sustains, then we can act on that relationship and make it a binding commitment. So the primary difference between infatuation and a sustainable relationship, or as we say love, is its continuation, sustainability. And that sustainability cannot be discerned just by the intensity of the emotion at the present moment. Sustainability has to be determined by the longevity of the emotion. Every relationship there will be peak emotions. I mean, they will feel so good. Another will feel so bad in the relationship. But overall, there is every sine wave, which is up and down, it also has a middle balance point. So the balance point should be that balance point at least stays at a high level, at a reasonably high level, then that means the relationship can be sustained. So patience is very important, by which one can evaluate whether those emotions sustain over a period of time. Does it answer your question? Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Gaur Premanande.